right, turn in your book to page 389, chapter 17. Chapter 17 has some theory, but it's almost exclusively a math-based chapter. And that's because the entire purpose of chapter 17 is learning how to determine the value of property and how to estimate the value of property. So we're going to talk about some of the theories of value, but most importantly, we're going to go through how to deal with the math of coming up with the value. Value in property is a huge piece of our job. It's a huge part of what we do. It's one of the things that our clients expect of us in a transaction. And so we're always going to be expected to advise our clients based on the value of the property that they're purchasing or thinking about purchasing. And so we have to know how to do that, how to come up with that value. The first thing you need to know about it is we're not training you to be appraisers. Okay? I don't want to go too in depth into the appraisal process, but they are trained much more rigorously on this subject than you are. They spend about 200 hours in class just working on valuation, and then they have to do a certain number of appraisals under the supervision of a certified general appraiser as an apprentice before they can do appraisals on their own. So one of the things you're going to learn in this chapter is that appraisers are allowed to give an exact value. We are never allowed to give exact values. We always have to give a range of value. One of the requirements for us as real estate brokers is to estimate a range of value versus an exact value. Our estimate is said to be an informal estimate of value. And it's of a probable sales price. They mentioned that phrasing on the bottom of page 389, a probable sales price of a particular property. So that's the language you should use when you're giving someone a value. You're allowed to estimate the probable sales price of that property. And we're going to talk about that a little bit too with things called broker price opinions in just a second. Now, early on in the class, I said that there really aren't 5 different types of real estate. I said I break them down into 3 different types of real estate. Does anybody remember what those 3 types were?
Residential, for-profit, and special use.
Okay. Things I live in, right? Things I live in. I buy it because I live in it. Things I buy because I make money off of it, so income-producing properties. And everything else falls in that special use category of things. Here's the reason I mentioned it in that way from the very beginning. In this chapter, we're going to teach you 3 different approaches to value in property, 3 different ways that you can go about coming up with a value for property. In other words, each one of those categories of property is going to have a different way to go about getting a value for that property. Now, I want you to be real aware that it's not what it looks like. It's why the owner owns it. In other words, Leanne said residential property. That's not really true. How did I phrase it?
Live in it.
Like
Things that I bought because I want to do what? Live in it. Here's the thing. Can residential property be income producing property?
Yes.
Yes. And if it's income producing, I'm not going to value it like it's a residential property. I'm going to value it as if it's an income producing property because that's what my client is interested in. Does everybody follow that?
Yes.
So you can't just look at it and say, oh, it's a house, so it's the sales comparison approach. No, it's only the sales comparison approach if the person buying it is buying it for residential purposes. Okay? So we're going to talk about different forms of value. Before we get to the different methods of value, we've got to get through some of the terminology here. On page 390, I can't read these numbers with my glasses on tonight. Page 390, you get into something called market value. Market value is the thing that we're trying to estimate. Market value is a prediction. That's an important word. It's a prediction. Hasn't happened yet. Okay? And it's a prediction of the most likely, most probable sales price And they give you a lot of factors. I'm going to talk to you about the factors that are important for you when you're buying a piece of property or when you're valuing a piece of property, and more important, what's important for you on a test, okay? Market value is very heavily influenced by full exposure to the market. Anything that limits a full exposure to the market is not going to give you an accurate market value for that property. So give me some examples of things that would limit my exposure on the market.
They won't let you put it on the MLS.
They won't let me put it on the MLS, so I'm marketing it without putting it on the MLS. Why would that be a problem?
It's not a competitive open
It's not
market.
competitive open marketplace, right? Where are most buyers going to be looking for properties?
MLS.
In the MLS or some system that pulls from the MLS. If they're going on Zillow.com, where do you think those listings come from?
MLS.
The MLS, right? So if we don't market a property in the MLS, did that property probably achieve its true market potential?
No.
No. So is that a property that I would want to use, say, to compare other properties to come up with their market value?
Absolutely not.
No. Does everybody follow that? I'm going to say that one more time. If the thing didn't get full market exposure on a test, would you use it as something that you would compare other properties to? Like, for example, I don't know, maybe you got a test question that said you were supposed to choose the best comparable from the following list. Well, what ways could they try to trip you up with something like that? They'll say, okay, well, we've got a 10-year-old 2-story brick home in a quiet residential subdivision with 1,800 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. And we're trying to come up with a value of it. And one of the answer choices is going to be an 1,820 square foot, 2-story brick house in a quiet residential subdivision, 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. And you're like, damn, that's it right there. That's sold for cash as a for sale by owner, having never been entered into the MLS. Does it still sound like a good comp?
No.
No. Because what's the whole purpose of putting it in the MLS in the first place?
To get the best value.
Get the most exposure, because that's going to yield what?
The most value.
The most value, the highest price, right? Otherwise we wouldn't advertise anything. If advertising didn't work, we wouldn't do so much of it. So you got to learn to spot what really influences market value, okay? So that definition they give you, it's an important one. It says the most probable sales price if you've got free and open competition. Well, what are some other things that could interfere with free and open competition?
If you sold it to like a family member?
If I sell it to my mama, am I likely going to sell it to my mama for the same price I would sell it to somebody I don't know?
No.
So should I use that as a real estate broker trying to come up with a value for another property? Should I use that sale to a family member as something as a point of comparison, or should I just ignore it?
Ignore it.
I should ignore it. And if you get it on a test, you should ignore it too. We call that we call it an arm's length transaction. You want to have an arm's length transaction. That means that there's no relationship between the buyer and the seller. So we want to have full exposure in marketing. We want to have an arm's length transaction. And we basically want to do everything we possibly can to make sure we've gotten the most value out of that property. Then and only then is it a good indicator of market value. But still, market value is a prediction. It hasn't happened yet. Now compare that to another term which is on page 391 called market price. What do you think the difference is between market value and market price?
The price it actually sold for.
Market price is the number it actually sold for. Market value is a prediction of what we think it would if we've got this full and open competition. Market price is what it actually did sell for, what it does sell for. Now, one of the most important ideas about value is in the middle of page 391, and it is also one of the hardest for your clients to come to terms with. This comparison of market value and cost. In your real estate career, and it won't take long, you'll be having a conversation with a seller, and the following will come out of their mouth. But I paid blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. And it's not so much that I don't care. Guess who really doesn't care?
The other
Buyers
The
don't.
buyers don't care what you paid for that swimming pool in the backyard, for example. So does the cost that was taken on in putting that improvement on a property really impact the value of that improvement?
No.
No. The value of it is who's willing to pay for it? The buyers. So the pool costs $50,000. Does it add $50,000 worth of value?
Only
No.
if it's that
Who knows?
important.
It depends where you are. It depends on the buyers in that area. It could add 50,000. It could add 5,000. It could add negative 10,000. It could add 100,000 because it's going to be dictated by your area. The cost has no impact on the value that's added. Does everybody follow that? That's a really important valuation idea. That cost has no impact on market value whatsoever. Don't worry about these forces and factors influencing property value. You're not going to be tested on those directly. Okay? You do need to know some of these economic principles of value that start on the bottom of page 391 and go into page 392. We've already talked about highest and best use. Everybody remember that one?
Yes.
It is the one thing that property is being used for right now, or could be used for, or should be used for right now, that's going to get the highest return on our investment
On that day.
on that day. Because it could change from day to day. And that's the other thing about value. Value changes on a daily basis. So anytime we're doing, for example, a CMA, which is our version of predicting the value of a property, a comparative market analysis, how long is that analysis valid for? How long? The day it's done. That's it, because the market changes every single day. Market value changes everything. How long do you think an appraisal is valid for? The day it's done. That's it. That's it, because the value is a continuously changing thing. So everybody's good on highest and best use. The principle of substitution, you might see that on a test. The principle of substitution is an important one because it's going to become the basis, the entire basis for the first approach to value, and probably the most important one for you guys. Most of you are going to go into residential real estate. That's just the odds. That's what the odds say, that most of you will end up selling houses. When you are in residential real estate, the method you use to come up with a value for property is called the sales comparison approach. Okay? And we're going to talk a lot about that in just a second. Tons. You don't necessarily have to take notes on that, but I just want to introduce the terminology to you. The sales comparison approach is the approach to value that you use to value things I live in, residential property. And the whole basis for the sales comparison approach is we want to find two things that are as similar as they possibly can be. One that we're trying to come up with a value for, and another that's extremely similar that has recently what? Sold. We want to see what some other buyer was willing to pay for something just like what we got. And that is the principle of substitution in action. The principle of substitution says that if two things are the same, if one buyer was willing to pay this for that thing, then another buyer should also be willing to pay that for that same thing. Or said another way, if you have two things that are identical and one's priced lower, which one is the buyer going to buy every time?
The lower.
The lower price one. That's the principle of substitution in action. It's the whole basis for the sales comparison approach. Okay? I don't think we need to talk about supply and demand. Conformity is an important one. The principle of conformity is real simple. Don't over-improve your house. Don't have the 8,000 square foot house in a neighborhood of 1,500 square foot houses. You're not going to maximize your investment in the property unless you conform with your surroundings. You shouldn't be significantly worse than your surroundings. You shouldn't be significantly better than your surroundings. If you want to maximize the market value of your property, you will conform with your surroundings.
That's why athletes have such a hard time selling their homes.
Because
they're in Cleveland and they have a $13 million mansion.
There you go.
Everybody else has
And I think that's true of a lot of sort of extravagant properties, that they don't fit in the area that they're in, And I think we've all seen houses in neighborhoods where somebody just didn't want to move, and over time they've added on to their house and they've improved it to the point. How many of you have ever ridden through the country and you see double wide, 8,000 square foot brick house sitting on the side of the road? Yep. You're like, what the hell are they doing? Yeah, it's a beautiful house. You live next to a trailer park, right? And that's fine. I'm not criticizing them, but are they going to get the maximum return on that investment they've made in that property? And the answer is no, they never will, because they're tremendously over-improved for their surroundings. So while we all say we don't like cookie cutter, if you like to maximize your investments, cookie cutter is not such a bad thing from that perspective. Okay? you can skip over the principle of anticipation. The principle of contribution. This goes back to that cost thing. Remember, cost doesn't impact value. What impacts value is the value that something contributes to the overall value. In other words, if I'm trying to determine what a fireplace is worth in a particular neighborhood, wouldn't it be real beneficial to me if I could find one house that sold with a fireplace and another almost identical house that sold without a fireplace? If I could find that data, then the difference in price would probably tell me what a buyer would be willing to pay for a fireplace in that neighborhood. Does everybody see that logic? Because that's going to be really important for the CMA approach later on. I get people who ask me all the time, agents, when they get in the real world and they want to do a CMA, well, how much is a garage worth? Depends on your neighborhood. But have you even looked to see if you can find a couple houses with garages and a couple houses without? And if you could, couldn't you probably come up with some reasonable number for the value of a garage, or what a buyer would be willing to pay for a garage in that neighborhood?
This might go here or not. What happens when you can't find something comparable? Like my brothers, they've had to extend their closing like 3 times now because they can't find comps for what he's buying.
Right. It's leave it up to the appraiser. Let them figure it out.
Yeah, it's been like a disaster for
Yeah.
them.
And you're going to get those. And I often tell brokers, remember, we are not experts on this subject matter. If the appraiser can't find a comp after looking for 3 months, what are your chances of finding one? Non-existent, right? You shouldn't hold yourself to that standard. I have agents all the time who come to me and say, I've been trying to do a CMA on this house and I can't find anything comparable. I say, okay, well, what are you looking at? She said, well, it's a house in Mebane that's on 6 acres and it's 4,000 square feet and there's nothing within 10 miles that's on more than an acre that isn't 100 years old, or, you know. I said, you can't do that. Well, what do you mean? I mean, you can't do it. You don't have enough expertise to come up with a value for that. And there's no shame in telling your client, I can't. So what should that broker do if they want that listing?
Hire an appraiser.
Hire an appraiser. You've got to go to a higher source. Now, the same broker should absolutely be able to come up with a value for a townhouse in a neighborhood of 100 other townhouses where 20 of them have sold in the last 2 years, right? Because you've got plenty of similar properties to compare to there. So you're not always going to be able to value every single property. This is not, it's far from a perfect science, and it's far from an exact science. We teach it like it's exact, but it's really very subjective. It's very subjective, okay? Over on page 393, they give you the appraisal process. Don't need to know it. You don't need to know it. Because guess what exam you're not taking?
The appraisal.
The appraisal exam. I don't know how to put it in here. You're not learning to be an appraiser. Here's what you need to know about appraisal. I'm not doing one. If you get a question that says, can you use the standard appraisal form to put a CMA on, what's your answer? No, because you're not an appraiser. You're not doing an appraisal. So you don't need to know about. Now, I do want to point out one piece of vocabulary that's in there that you might want to know. If you look on page 394, number 7 up at the top, it says reconcile the estimated values for the final value estimate. Remember way back when I first started talking a few minutes ago, I said appraisers are able to give an exact value, right? While we give a range of value. That's that step that they do that we don't do. It's called reconciliation. They reconcile the values. And here's what a reconciliation might look like for them. And I'm just going to show you this so you have an idea of what it is. Again, you don't have to know how to do it because it's the appraiser's job. If they're valuing a residential property, for example, and they've determined that they're going to use a sales comparison approach, and they've chosen 4 comparable properties. Okay, comps, 4 comps. They've chosen 4 comparable properties, and we'll just call them A, B, C, and D. And they have established values for each one of A, B, C, and D. They've said, comp A says that my house is worth $155,000. Comp B says that my subject property is worth $162,000. Comp C says that my subject property is worth $160,000. And Comp D says we're worth $174,000. Now, as a real estate broker, what value can you give to your client based on that data? Because as a real estate broker, you'd come to this same point, by the way. You'd have those same 4 comps, and presumably you'd make the same adjustments that the appraisers made, and so you'd come up with this same data. What value are you going to give your clients based on what you see up there?
An average.
155 to 174.
You're not going to give them an average.
A range.
You're going to give them a range, and you're going to say that property is worth somewhere between $155,000 and $174,000, because that's all you're qualified to do. Does that make sense for everybody? Now, appraisers don't do that. Appraisers are trained to come up with an exact number. This is what reconciliation looks like, and I don't know how they do it because I'm not a trained appraiser. I don't know how they come up with these percentages. They will basically go through and rank the comps. Which one is the most similar, and which one is the least similar? Which one is the most reliable? Which one is the least reliable? So they might say that Comp A is 25% similar, while Comp B is 40% similar. Comp C is 25% similar, and Comp D is only 10% similar. Somebody check my math. Does that add up to 100? I think it does, right? Yeah. Okay. In theory, they should add up to 100. So what they will do is simply multiply these numbers by those percentages. They'll take $155,000 times 25%. So they come up with a number. And they come up with a number here. They come up with a number here, and they come up with a number here. And you know what they do with them? They add those numbers together, and that's the number that's the appraised value of that property. That's what reconciliation looks like. Does that sort of make sense for you? You don't have to go that far. You simply say it's worth somewhere between 155 and 174. And if they want to know more exact than that, then what do? We go get an appraisal. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right? So, let's talk about the sales comparison approach. Turn over in your book to page 398. The sales comparison approach is the most common approach to value. It's actually the best one. It's the most accurate one by a long shot. If certain things are present. Number one, if there are lots of very similar properties in the immediate area, and those very similar properties turn over on a regular basis. What do I mean by turnover? They sell. Because the sales comparison approach, shockingly based on its name, relies on a lot of sales for you to compare with. Now, when you get into the sales comparison approach, here's the big picture. I have a subject property. My subject property is the property that I'm trying to value. It's the property that I've been hired to sell. It's the property that my buyer client is interested in making an offer on. Aren't those the 2 times when you'd be doing this exercise? Hopefully you're not just running around doing CMAs for your health. They're not that fun, trust me, okay? So you're doing this because you're going for a listing presentation and you want to advise the seller on what they should list their house for. Or you're doing this because you've got a buyer client who's looking at making an offer on a property and you want to give them good solid advice about where they should be offering. We call that your subject property. Now, everybody, I want you to hold this hand, your left hand, in front of you, just like this, okay? This hand, for the remainder of this course, is afflicted. You cannot move this hand. It does not move. It does not go up, it does not go down. It is locked in place right there. In your left hand is your subject property. And I know this seems like the dumbest thing you have ever done in your life. However, I have taught this a long time. And I'm telling you, this is the way that will make sure you never adjust the wrong property. Because anybody want to guess what the #1 mistake that's made on a sales comparison approach math problem is? Adjusting the subject rather than adjusting the comparable. What did I say about this hand?
It never moves.
It never moves. What's in this hand? The subject property. So now, in your other hand, which you're going to also hold in front of you, you have all kinds of flexibility. It moves all over the place. What do you think is in this hand?
The comparable.
The comparable property. So, the goal of the sales comparison approach is to always make things the same. Now, things are not the same in nature, right? Houses are not the same. They're relatively similar, but they're not going to be the same. We want to eliminate as many of those differences as we possibly can. And the way we do that is with money. We adjust for physical differences with money. If my subject property has a fireplace, remember my subject is locked right here, it doesn't move, right? And my comparable property does not have a fireplace. Am I better, the same, or worse than my subject property? Fireplace, no fireplace. Where am I?
Down.
I am worse, right? My comparable property is worse. Now, what did I say the whole purpose of the sales comparison approach was? To adjust until they are the what?
Same.
The same. If this one cannot move, what is the only possible adjustment I can make that will make them the same? A positive adjustment plus, or a negative adjustment minus. Which way am I going? Plus, because I have to raise, I cannot lower this one down. I have to raise this one up. And I'm going to raise this one up by the value of a fireplace. Whatever buyers are willing to pay for a fireplace in that particular neighborhood, in that particular market. And again, we go back, how would we determine what a buyer would be willing to pay for that fireplace? Ideally, we'd like to find some that have sold with fireplaces and some that have sold without fireplaces. And if they're the same in every other respect, then the difference in price must be the value of a fireplace. Does this sort of make sense about the big picture of how? Now, some people say, well, how do I do that? I mean, I'll never be able to find a bunch of sales with a fireplace. And you're right. You won't. That's where the subjective part comes in. Because you have to ask yourself reasonably, okay, you know, what are most buyers in that area willing to pay for a fireplace? That's where expertise and experience comes in. So you're going to have to rely on people that are more experienced than you. You don't have to rely on people more experienced than you for the actual math of it. The adjustment numbers may seem foreign to you, but the math is super simple as long as you remember that the subject property is locked in place and you are adjusting the comp either up or down or not at all to make it the same. 1,500 square foot subject property, 1,800 square foot comparable property. Where am I? Here, here, or here?
Up.
I'm up here. I'm better, right? So what is my adjustment going to be?
Down.
It's going to be a negative overall adjustment. Does that make sense for everybody? And I'm going to be adjusting by the value of what?
Square foot.
The square footage difference. In this case, was 300 square feet. So I need to know some dollar per square foot adjustment for that. And by the way, that's always going to be your biggest adjustment, the square footage adjustment. It's usually always going to be your biggest number. So getting properties that are very close in square footage is very important when you start doing the sales comparison approach. Because if you think in a neighborhood where the square footage is $100 per square foot, even 150 square feet is a $15,000 adjustment. That's a pretty large adjustment to be making. So you want to be very conscious of differences in size when you start making these adjustments. When you start choosing comps, and this is very relevant for your test, the style of house matters a lot. We don't want to compare, if we can help it, two-story houses with ranch houses. Why is that a bad comparison, do you think?
Not
There's a
the
different
same that
people.
Different people,
Sorry.
different sets of buyers are interested in both houses. I think that's a good point. How much, 2,000 square foot ranch, how many square feet of roof does it have? 2,000. 2,000 square foot two-story house, how many square feet of roof does it have?
Probably
Probably
1,000. 2,000 square foot ranch, how much foundation wall does it have? 2,000 square feet. 2,000 square foot two-story house, how much foundation wall does it have? 1,000. Which one's more expensive to build that 2,000 square feet? The ranch with double the foundation and double the land and double the roof, or the two-story house? Which one's more expensive on $1 per square foot to build?
The ranch.
The ranch is. So you couple the much greater expense to build along with the different subset of buyers, many of whom are willing to pay that higher premium because they don't have a choice. And why would somebody maybe be willing to pay a higher premium on a ranch house?
Disabled.
They're disabled, they're older, They don't want to do stairs, they can't do stairs, right? And so you've got a subset of buyers who are willing to pay that extra. I'm in that subset of buyers and I'm not disabled. You know what sold me on a ranch house? Being in the real estate business and selling 3-story townhouses, because I said I will never do that to myself. Never. I mean, I've gotten to the point with a 3-story townhouse, I show them the first 2 floors and I'm like, yeah, you guys go take a look at the bedrooms. I'll be right here. I ain't lost anything up there. I'm tired. I'm old, I'm fat, my knees hurt. I don't want to go up there. I don't always do that, but at the end of the day, I've been known to. And so, yes, there are buyers who, and so I think that's a really good point. You don't want to compare those different styles of houses because you're really comparing 2 different whole groups of buyers there. So we want to stay as similar as we possibly can, because if I ask you a simple question like, what's the best comp? Well, the best comp is going to be the one with the fewest adjustments being made to it, right? If I show you this comp and we have to adjust the square footage, we have to adjust the garage, we have to adjust for the bathrooms, we have to adjust for the deck, and on the other one we have to do a square footage adjustment, but everything else is the same, which one is a better comp to my subject property? The one with just the square footage difference, because the more adjustments I make, the more potential there is for me to get off with errors, right? Is everybody following my thought process so far with this thing? So I want you guys to do, and I'm going to write a very simple thing up here on the board, and I want you to just write down what the adjustment would be, okay? What the adjustment would be. I'm not even going to give you a sales price, because I just want to know what the adjustment is going to be. I'm going to give you one subject property and one comp, and I want you to write down for me what the adjustment would be. So my subject is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that is 1,800 square feet. My comparable property is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that is 2,050 square feet. In a neighborhood where square footage averages $110, 110% per square foot. Now I want you to calculate the adjustment, and I want you to write the adjustment down. Now keep it in mind, an adjustment is always either a positive or a negative number. It's not just a number in a vacuum. I need to know, are you adjusting up by whatever number you write down, or are you adjusting down by that number? Because I want to make sure you understand the way these things are going. Yes. Yes. Good. Yeah. Good. All right, so subject, right? How many square feet you got right here?
1,800.
1,800. Comp over here, right? How many square feet are over here?
2,050.
All right, so is that up here, or down here?
Oh, well,
It's up.
yeah.
So which way do I need to adjust?
Yeah.
Down. Okay, so like minus, so it's going to be a minus number.
Okay.
Okay. So now, minus, how many square feet do we need to take away? If we're going to make them the same, how many square feet do we need to adjust for? 1,800. That's the adjustment we need to make.
Okay.
That's 250 square feet, right?
Okay.
And how much is each square foot worth?
Alright.
So 250 times 110.
Okay.
It's going to be minus that amount.
Okay.
Good. Be minus 27.5.
Yeah.
Are you guys all minus 27.5? Everybody good? Good. So, again, just use my hands. Subject property over here, locked in place, right? At 1,800 square feet. My comp is floating, but it floats high in this case, right? Because it's 2,050 square feet. So the only way to make an adjustment to get my right hand back down to my left, as I already said it right there, right, to get it back down, it's going to be a negative adjustment. That's a negative adjustment, and I'm adjusting for 250 square feet. Each square foot is valued at $110, so 250 square feet times $110 per square foot is going to be an adjustment of $27,500. Now that's called your adjustment amount. The adjustment amount is how much you're moving up or down. The adjustment amount is how much I'm going up and down. So in this case, we know the adjustment is going to be a negative $27,500. That's my adjustment. I might also have asked you for something called my indicated value. My indicated value is the number I get after the adjustment has been applied to my comparable property. Remember, we chose it as a comp, not only because it was similar, but because it had recently done what? Sold. So to come up with my indicated value, what other piece of information do you think I would have needed to give you here?
How much is sold?
I would have needed to give you the sales price of my comparable property. So let's say my comparable property sold for $218,500. How would I calculate my indicated value from that? I would subtract my adjustment from my sales price. So 218.5 minus 27.5,
191.
191. So my indicated value in this case would be $191,000 based on that one comparable property.
So this would be like your subjects indicated?
This is the indicated value of my subject property, right? That's what I'm hunting for, is an indicated value of my subject property. All right. Now, keeping up with this same problem, I'm going to build on it a little bit over here. Same data here, except I'm going to give you two more comps, and I want you to run them out. Comp 2, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and 1,900 square feet, and it sold for, we'll say, $198,000. And then comp 3 is also 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and it has 1,710 square feet and sold for $189,000. So now I want you to give me a range of value for my subject property. Well, all that means is instead of adjusting for one comp, you're going to adjust for how many?
Three.
All three, because all three are going to give you a different indicated value, right? So you're going to repeat that same process you did on comp 1, except you're going to do it now for comp 2 and comp 3, and then you're going to give me a range of values.
Is the price per square foot the same?
Same price per square foot, which is building on the same problem over here. Yep.
is that what you said?
on a range of value, which means you're gonna make an adjustment on all three, and your range is gonna be from your lowest indicated value to your highest indicated value.
Yeah. You didn't even look. Right answer.
31, 87, and 190.
Actually.
Good. Good.
I'll say I'm terrible with this.
That's all right, that's what you're here for, right?
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. So, at this, okay, so you gave us 2 and 3, so at this point, you want us to take the,
The same adjustment you did in the first, okay? So first of all, tell me what you need to adjust for. What's different about comp 2 versus your subject property?
the square foot.
So you need to adjust for square footage. So now, hold your subject property up in your left hand. Okay? How many square feet are here? 1,800.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. Okay? Now, your comparable property is over in your other hand.
Yep.
How many square feet are there?
19,
So it's higher,
Right.
right? So which way do you need to adjust?
down,
Down. By how many square feet?
100,
100. So minus, because it's down,
okay?
100, because you're taking out 100 square feet,
Okay.
times how much does each square foot cost? There you go. So that's going to be your adjustment.
Oh,
Okay?
Okay.
And that adjustment's going to be applied to this sales price. So it's going to be this number minus whatever that is.
okay, okay,
Okay?
okay.
Change the range. These two numbers are right. Okay? Good. Right to the light. I want to see it. Good.
Do we need to know these words superior and,
Superior and inferior, yeah, we'll
Okay.
talk about it. So superior just means better than.
right,
If your comp is superior, your adjustment's going to be a negative adjustment, right? Your comp's better, you're gonna adjust downward.
right.
If your comp is inferior, you're gonna adjust up, it's gonna be a positive adjustment. It shouldn't help you with this ugly ass Kentucky shirt on. Just putting that out there.
You don't even know.
That's right, you're a Louisville fan.
You don't even know, Travis.
I should have sat next to you. Okay, so this one says 108, right?
No,
Has it, okay,
so multiply your 100 times 1.
okay, so, okay, we need to take 11,000 off there?
Right, so write down minus 11,000, that's your adjustment, right?
Okay,
198 minus 11,000. The indicated value of this comp number 2
okay,
equals 187. Okay? Remember, comp 1 gave you 191.
okay.
Comp 2 gave you 187.
Oh.
Now this one, okay, you get the adjustment, it's $9,900.
Okay.
But hold your hand up,
Probably going out of your mouth.
your subject. How many square feet you got?
1,800.
How many square feet are in your comp?
17.
So, make them equal.
How many gotta go?
You gotta go up.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it.
I promise the hand thing is the dumbest thing you might do in this class, but it works. It does work. And after all these years, I still do it sometimes. I catch myself sitting at my desk sometimes going like this, you know, I hope nobody's looking at me, you know. Because honestly, the most common mistake is simply to adjust in the wrong direction. You do the math, but there wasn't a single one of you who did the math wrong. But there were 3 people who adjusted in the wrong direction, you know. And so, and as soon as I said, hold your hands up, they're like, oh, I get it, right? I know it seems dumb, but it does work, and it really does help you with making sure you're adjusting in the right direction. Is everybody good so far on this, okay? Obviously, they're not this easy. We're going to make them more complex. But in truth, they really are this easy. Because all we're going to be doing is repeating the same process. It's just we're not going to be making one adjustment per property. Now we're going to add in things like bathrooms, and we're going to add in a fence, or we're going to add in a deck. But we're just making the adjustments over and over and over. Fair enough? Okay. So let's add in one that traditionally confuses people a little bit. Okay? And I'm going to go back and I'm going to update my subject property just a little bit. I'm going to put a new stat here for my subject property.
No.
All right? And I'm also going to erase its indicated value because it's going to, the indicated value for all my comps, because they're going to change. We're going to add an adjustment in here. Okay? My subject property is still 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and 1,800 square feet. But it's also got 2 baths. Actually, we'll say 2.5 baths.
Yeah.
So we're taking, it says it's 2 baths, so we're just changing that out.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what?
I mean, I didn't know if they had an extra 2
Yeah, I'm
bathrooms in
glad
the yard.
you're,
Yeah, I
I'm
didn't
so
know.
glad you are paying attention because I clearly am not. 2.5 baths, okay? Now, we'll leave comp number 1 at 2 baths. Comp number 2 is going to change to 2.5 baths. Comp number 3 is going to become 3 baths. Okay? And we'll leave their sales prices the same because I don't want to disrupt as little as I can here. I don't want to go crazy. We'll leave their sales prices the same. Now, if you're doing this CMA, and you are, I've given you an adjustment value for square footage. What other adjustment value do you see that you're going to need in order to do this CMA? We need to know values of bathrooms. And we don't just, and here's where you're going to get confused, and I'm going to try to work my way through and navigate this minefield. You don't just need the value of half baths. You also need the value of full baths. And here's what I'm going to show you, okay? Look at comp number 1, 2 baths, and the subject property. Subject property has how many baths? 2.5, right here, right? Comp number 1 has 2 baths. Is it lower or higher or the same?
It's lower.
It's lower, it's worse, right? So overall, what's our adjustment going to be? We're going to go up. What do we need to add to a 2-bathroom house to make it a 2.5 bathroom house? We need to add a half a bath, right? That one's real simple. Look at comp number 3. Subject property. How many baths do we have?
2.5.
2, right?
2.5.
2.5, right? We have 2.5 in my subject property, right here. How many do I have in my comp?
3.
Up here, right?
Yep.
So which way am I adjusting?
Down.
Down. Down by what, though?
Half a bath.
You say a half bath. What is a 3-bathroom house? Think about that 3rd bathroom. What's in that 3rd bathroom? A toilet,
Tub.
a sink, and somewhere to use the facilities, right? Now, think of that half bath that you want to take away. What's in that half bath that you want to take away? A toilet, and a sink. So take that full bath, which got a toilet, a sink, and a shower, and take away the toilet and the sink. What are you left with? A room with a shower. Is that a half bath? No, see, it doesn't work that way. What we need to take away from that house is the difference in value between a full bath and a half bath. Because the difference in value is not going to be just double a half bath. It usually is some less than, right? So we'll say, for this question, for our, I need a black pen, she stole it. Kentucky person, always stealing something, right?
Sorry.
Gotta watch them, they're always cheating, you know, I don't play by the rules. Okay? So, adjustments we need to add here. We're going to say a half bath is worth $5,000. And a full bath, I don't know why I put a dollar sign there. And a full bath is worth $7,500. So now, I want you to go back through, and I want you to recalculate the indicated value of each one of those comps and give me a new range of value.
Are we doing the square footage? You want to start from the square footage number?
Well, you've already got the adjustment for the square footage. It's going to be the same adjustment there, right? So you still have to make that adjustment, but you don't have to recalculate the adjustment. Okay? Square footage number is going to stay the same. So basically, you're just adding in a new adjustment for the baths to each one of your comps.
Sorry.
Do you want to set it up as a range still?
Yep, always a range.
Off the court.
Good, right?
No, I mean,
Division one, athletes that are worth billions of dollars, these institutions aren't getting anything they
So
want.
the first one, the only thing different is the back.
The thing, the
So why are you subtracting? Hold your hands up.
like.
What's your subject got?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, because I have that, needs to go up. Okay. So this is it, right?
No. What's your overall, hold your hand up. Subject, how many bats you got? Hold your comp up. How many bats?
Three.
So what is your overall adjustment?
exactly, like, yeah, that's the thing.
Don't look on a piece of paper. How many's over
Oh,
here?
sorry, ask the question again.
How many's over?
Subject has 2.5.
And how many's over here?
3.
So which way does it need to go?
Down.
Down. Which way did you go?
And my math down. But the difference,
But what adjustment did you make? You made a,
positive.
so what,
needs to be negative.
there you go. You did the math right, you just adjusted the wrong direction, okay? Yep.
We don't see the regular value or the adjusted value? Or you change the remaining?
You always start back at the original sales price. In this case, you're just applying 2 adjustments instead of 1, right? You're applying the same square footage adjustment you started with.
Okay, is this, you said 7,500 for the three bed? What were these ones? Okay.
Okay, so, 2.5 pass,
Right.
right?
And
Just do.
So I'm going which way?
Down.
Down. I know it's minus, right?
Right.
And I need to take away the difference between a half bath and a full bath.
Okay, so minus 5,000.
Is that the difference between? What's the difference between a full bath and a half bath? Full bath's worth how much? Half bath.
5,000.
So what's the difference between them?
25.
So that's what you need to take away, is the difference.
Okay, okay. So this-
There you go.
okay.
All right, so look at comp 1. Let's go through comp 1 real quickly here. On comp 1, well, my square footage adjustment's going to stay exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
Dollar per square foot stayed the same. My square footage adjustment, I'm still going down by $27.5. I'm still starting at my sales price of $218.5. I'm still going down by $27.5 for my square footage adjustment, but I need to look at an adjustment for my bath now. Subject, 2.5 baths. Comp, 2 baths. Which way am I adjusting? Up by the value of what?
Half a bath.
Half bath, which is 5,000. So that's going to be plus 5,000. So now it's 218.5 minus 27.5 plus 5,000. What do you come up with an indicated value for comp 1?
196.
$196,000. Okay? Comp 2. Do we need to make any changes to comp 2? We already adjusted for the square footage. The bath is
A push.
a push, exactly the same. So what's our indicated value for comp 2?
187.
187, the same number. Comp 3, we've already adjusted for the square footage, right? That was plus $9,900, if I remember right. Because it was plus 90 square feet, okay? The bathroom situation here, 2.5 baths in my subject property, 3 baths in my comparable property. So I know my adjustment's going to be an overall what? Overall down. And I write that down first before you even start trying. See, here's the thing. Human nature is you want an answer first. That's the worst way to go about it, because then you're scrambling going, okay, do I go up or down? And that's when you mess it up. Write down the positive or negative part first and then come up with the number, right? So in this case, overall, my adjustment needs to be down. It's going to be a negative number, something negative here. So the question is, do I go down strictly by the value of a half bath? Well, we have to think logically. A 3-bathroom house minus a half bath is a 2-bathroom house plus a really weird room with a shower in it, right? That's what you got. That's not what we want. What we want is the difference in value between that full bath and that half bath. And what is that difference in value? It's $2,500. So my overall adjustment is going to be down by $2,500. So what's your new indicated value for comp 3? 196,400. So my range of value now is from 187 to 196,400. Now let me ask you this question. Which one of those is my best comparable property?
The one with the least amount of adjustment.
Which would be
Comp 2.
comp 2. Because comp 2 we only had to adjust for 1 factor versus 2 factors. Alright. So sometimes on the test, you're not given the adjustment numbers. Every once in a while, they give you a type of a math problem where they don't necessarily give you the adjustment numbers. If you remember, when we started talking about this earlier tonight, I said part of the art of it is learning how to spot what the value of an adjustment was. And I mentioned the fireplace. I said if you had two properties where one had a fireplace and one didn't, and they were identical in every other way, then the difference in sales price between those two properties must be the value of the fireplace, right? Okay? So I'm going to write two comps down up here on the board. Now, when you're not given the adjustments, the way you come up with the adjustments is by actually comparing the comps. You're not even going to look at the subject property because you need to get your adjustment values first. So if they ask you a value and they don't tell you, oh, a square foot is worth this, or a deck is worth this, or a screen porch is worth this, and you have to come up with those adjustment numbers, you're going to be comparing the comparable properties first. Okay? Is everybody with me so far on that? So I'm going to write down two comps and show you what I mean. So let's say you have these two comparable properties. Comp 1 is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,800 square feet. It sold for $190,000. Comp 2 is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,900 square foot. It sold for $200,000. What do you notice about those two comparable properties? Number one, they're very similar. What's the only difference between the two of them? Square footage. And specifically, how many square feet? 100 square feet difference between the two properties, right? And that 100 square foot difference accounts for how much of a difference in their sales price? $10,000. So another way we could say that is 100 square feet is worth $10,000. Couldn't we do that? And from that, could we get the value of 1 square foot? Yeah. We would divide 10,000 by 100, so 1 square foot is worth how much money? $100. So now we would have that adjustment to apply if we were trying to value a subject property. Does that make sense for everybody? And we could expand this. Let's say instead of 2 comps, they gave us 3 comps. They said comp 3 is a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, 1,900 square foot property. And it sold for $207,500. Well, we already came up with a square footage adjustment based on the fact that comp 1 and comp 2 were exactly alike except for square footage, correct? So we still know that square feet are $100 per square foot. What information can we glean from comparing comp number 2 and comp number 3?
A bathroom costs $7,500.
That a bathroom is worth $7,500, right? Because the only difference between comp number 2 and comp number 3 is that bathroom, and the difference in pricing is $7,500. Does everybody follow that line of thinking so far? So a bath, in this case, 1 bath, is worth $7,500. And suppose they had gone one step further in the question, switch boards here for a second. And they wanted you to value a subject property those 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, and 1,750 square feet. Could you now come up with a value for that subject property based on the adjustments you just came up with over there. Okay, you just compare it like you always have. Look at comp number 1. So we'll go back over here and make our adjustment. Comp number 1, 3 bedroom. Do we need to make an adjustment for bedrooms?
No.
No. 2 baths. Do we need to make an adjustment for baths?
Yes.
Yes. So our subject has how many baths? 3. Our comp has 2. So which way do we need to adjust? Up. So it's a plus adjustment. And what is the value of that bath? $7,500. Now, square footage, do we need to make an adjustment?
Yes.
We are sitting with our comp at, our subject at $1,750, right? And how many does our comp have? 1,500, so which way are we adjusting? Down. It's a negative adjustment by how many square feet? 50 times, what is our adjustment amount? $100, so it's going to be a negative $5,000. And so we sold for $190. $190 plus $7,500 minus $5,000 is going to be $192,500, I think, right? And then we could do the same thing for comp number 2. Again, bedrooms, we don't need to make an adjustment. We're the same. Baths, we need to make the same adjustment we made in comp 1, right? Same thing, so it's going to be plus $7,500. And square footage, in this case, we still need to make a square footage adjustment. My subject's at 1,750, my comp's up here at 1,900, so it's still negative, right? But how many square feet is it this time?
150.
Minus 150 times my $100, which is a minus $15,000 adjustment. So in this case, I've got $200,000 plus $7,500 minus $15,000. I believe that's $192,500, isn't it?
Yep.
Right? And then on comp 3, I don't need to make an adjustment for bedrooms. How about bathrooms? I need to make an adjustment?
Nope.
No? How about square footage?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep.
Need to make the same adjustment I just made on comp 2, right? So that's going to be minus $15,000. And we sold for $207,500. I'm going to go out on a wild limb and say that comes out to $190,000. What do you notice as a trend when you have to come up with the adjustment numbers based on the data they give you? What's your range of value look like? Pretty tight, isn't it? So, if you get one of these questions where they expect you to come up with the adjustments, and you run all these comps and you don't come out with the same number for each one, you did something wrong in coming up with your adjustments. Does everybody follow that? Because you're sort of standardizing everything by making those comparisons. So go do number 4 now. You should be able to do number 4 in your packet.